watching this meeting on City 7 to the September 25th meeting of the Independence Planning Commission. Before we begin our meeting, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with our meetings, it is a responsibility of this commission to hold public hearings and make recommendations to the Independent City Council on matters related to zoning and land use changes within the city. We also consider and make decisions on plats, special use permits, and other issues, as well as changes in codes and policies that relate to city planning. Our procedure for each case is as follows. First, the applicant will be recognized to speak on behalf of their case, followed by anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak in favor of the matter. Second, those who are in opposition or who have questions regarding the case will be recognized to speak. Then, if there was opposition or questions from the public, the applicant will be allowed a rebuttal period to address those concerns or questions. Once the applicant is finished, the chair will declare the public hearing portion of the case closed, and further comment from the public will not be recognized. At this point, the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss the merits of the case with one another, and during the discussion, the commission reserves the right to ask questions of all parties concerned, and then finally, the commission will render a decision on the case. Because this is the only public hearing of the cases on the agenda tonight, all those who wish to speak will be heard. All comments and questions should be addressed to the chair and not directly to city staff or directly to the applicant. The chair also requests that statements be kept brief and on point. Do not wander off the subject. And that if that statement has been already made by a previous speaker, please do not repeat it, but please indicate that you also agree with the speaker on that matter. Now, to expedite tonight's meeting, the chair asks that everyone who wishes to testify or who believes that they may testify, please stand now and be sworn in. Those standing, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth before this commission? If so, please answer, I do.
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Before we begin tonight, I just want to say to the commission that if there is, after each of these cases, if there is somebody who wants to speak in favor or in opposition, that's fine, but I would probably entertain a motion at that time that the speaker be allowed a certain number of minutes to speak. I think 3 to 5 minutes, I'll leave that up to the person who moves, is enough time for someone to get their point across. So I just want to put that out there, and if someone feels so moved, they can do that after our first case tonight. The first case is case number 18-310-02, preliminary plat, Stone Canyon, second plat. Does the city have anything to present?
Yes, I do. Just to refresh everyone, this is D&D development, a residential development request, a preliminary plat to approve Stone Canyon second plat. a subdivision with 8 lots located at the intersection of, or near the intersection of South White Sands Court and South Stone Canyon Drive. The preliminary plat would consist of 8 single-family residents on 8 new lots ranging from about 10,400 to 11,900 square feet in area. And again, this proposal will be adding to the existing 106 lots that already exist in the developed portion of the development, bringing it up to 114 lots. According to the city fire code, developments of 1 and 2 family dwellings where the number of dwelling units exceed 100 should provide separate and approved fire access roads. Currently, there's only one access to this development. According to the developer, the city has issued permits on 100 lots in this development already, so they are currently maxed out. That condition is, or that issue is part of the condition. That's your second condition of your recommendation in the recommendation section. Basically, a little reminder here about approval criteria for preliminary plats for the Planning Commission. According to section 1470202G of the UDO, recommendations and decisions on preliminary plats must be based on the consideration of all the following criteria, and if they meet these criteria, such a permit should be approved. Number 1, compliance with environmental and health laws and regulations concerning water and air pollution, solid waste disposal, water supply facilities, community or public sewage disposal, and where applicable, my tongue's tied tonight, applicable, individual systems for sewage disposal. Number 2, availability of water that meets the acceptable fire flow requirements and is sufficient for the reasonably foreseen needs of the subdivision. 3, the availability and accessibility of utilities. 4, the availability and accessibility of all public services such as schools, police, fire protection, transportation, recreation facilities, and parks. 5, consistency with the zoning district regulations. 7, conformity with the major thoroughfare plan. Or that was 6. 7, affect the proposed subdivision on existing public streets and the need for new streets or highways to serve the subdivision. 8, physical land characteristics such as floodplain, slope, soil, and elevation differentials with abutting properties. 9, recommendations and comments of the Development Review Committee and other reviewing agencies. 10, conformity with the master sewer and water utility plan. And 11, compliance with this development ordinance, the UDO, and all other applicable regulations. Again, staff's recommendation for approval of the preliminary plat are 2. The first one being address the final plat in the manner, the lots on the final plat in the manner as shown in the staff report. And number 2, the final plat for Stone Canyon second plat shall only be considered for approval after a second entrance to Stone Canyon is made available, or, and this is an addition from the last time here, a development agreement for a schedule of completion for the lots and the required infrastructure is made.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Does any of the commissioners have questions of Brian? Okay, would the applicant come forward, please? State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Maloney, attorney with Real Law in Lee Summit. My address is 301 Southeast Douglas, Suite 201, Lee Summit, Missouri, 64063.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we are back today. Today is our continued public hearing on the preliminary plat for D&D Development's 8 additional lots in the golf course. Last time we were here, you had asked that we go ahead and hold our neighborhood meeting prior to continuing with the public hearing for the preliminary plat and prior to us going to the city council. We had planned on having the neighborhood meeting, but we changed up the order and had it before we got your approval, as you requested. That was last week, and we had the neighborhood meeting. There were a lot in attendance. Charlie was there to actually explain some of the platting process, which was very helpful. And so here we are, and we're back. And a couple of points that I wanted to make. You've heard about the development, but one is we accept all of the conditions, and I will discuss the access road in just a second. You know, the biggest and most important point here is there's 2. One, as we've discussed, this is an administrative decision. Staff has recommended approval. And has determined that we do meet all of the criteria. And so the ordinance does say that we shall be issued the preliminary plat. Just like a building permit, this is an administrative type decision. 2 is in our subdivision declaration, just like in almost all modern subdivision declarations for new neighborhoods under development, when they are still controlled by the developer. There's a build-out phase, and the developer controls the HOA and has the discretion to add and remove property to the subdivision during that developer control period. That is the case in this subdivision, and it is a unilateral right. We could go to the courthouse or to the recorder's office and add this property just by legal description, but for we need the platting approved, and it would become part of our subdivision. And that is because there are no homeowner rights to add or remove. We don't have to get any approvals or anything. That is very commonplace. This development, it has been in the developer control period for quite a long time, because it started in 2006 or 2007. And then stalled for several years until my client came in 2014-ish, maybe 2011, 2014. And so we are still in that developer control period. We are almost over it, but we are still in that period where we can add property or remove property without any consent of anyone. And that is recorded on the land records, and every homeowner in the subdivision agreed to that provision when they purchased the property. So that is just part of buying buying a house in an incomplete subdivision. With respect to the condition on the access road, we have met with the fire, I believe the deputy fire chief, and went through the whole process, what we want to do, what our plans are for these 8 lots. And a second access is required for additional building permits. We have come to an agreement, and provided we get approval for our preliminary plat, we'll be submitting a code modification to the fire department on these points. 1, we will provide a temporary access road for access onto Stone Canyon Drive, and that will allow them, 1, we can get the other 6 building permits that we can't get anyway, But two, it will allow for the additional 8 lots. The temporary access road, we will also secure with a maintenance bond and make sure that it's up to code and the proper turning radiuses and everything for their purposes. Because really the issue is they come in Stone Canyon Drive and the 2 fire trucks park next to each other, and then if someone needs to, like an emergency, an ambulance needs to come in, the drives are blocked and they can't get through because there's the water and everything like that. So this temporary access will actually make it safer for everyone on Stone Canyon Drive because there is an in and out. We will also be putting a fire hydrant next to the maintenance barn. There is no fire protection there now, and that was, I'm not sure how that happened, but it was, I think with the prior developer, maybe they just didn't do it, but we are also going to put that improvement in as well. And then for future development, we will improve the MoDOT right-of-way, that outer road, to MoDOT standards, curbs, gutters, everything that is required by MoDOT, and they will have to have assurances that MoDOT will approve, and all of our, everything is up to snuff. So that is the discussions that we've had. We will submit the code modification along with the development agreement with all of those terms and conditions. We hope to get that approved in conjunction with the preliminary plat at council, and if not, then we can do it with the final plating approval as well. Let me make sure I've hit all of my points. I think that is everything that I wanted to share. If there's any questions for me, happy to answer.
Thank you. The commissioners have any questions of Jackie here? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the chair just asked by show of hands, how many people are here to speak either for or against this? Okay, thank you. Does anybody remember my conversation?
Mr. Chair?
About yes.
In order to expedite this in a reasonable manner and yet assure each person an opportunity to speak, I move that we should allow not more than 3 minutes per person.
A motion's been made by Billy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Billy's moved. Cindy's seconded. Somebody want to take a vote?
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. The motion's been approved. What that means is you'll have 3 minutes, which is very generous, a long time, to get your point across. So if you, what we'll do though is I will, if you're past 2.5 minutes, I will say 30 seconds, and you'll have 30 seconds to kind of wrap up what you want to say. So first, I need to have people who are in favor of this case. Okay? So if anybody's in favor and wants to speak for approval of this case, then they need to do so at this time. And then after everybody who speaks for approval, I can have some folks that want to speak against it, then they'll have their turn. Okay.
My name is Aaron Hobbin. I am on 4241 South Stone Canyon Drive.
Okay.
I've lived there for about almost 3 years, down by the T-box at that end of the street. When Mr. Stallings first brought this idea to some of us and everything else about doing this, being an avid golfer out there and a full member out there, I had some concerns about reshaping the golf course. Okay, it's a Greg Norman signature course. I didn't want to mess with that and everything else. Mr. Stallings then explained over a period of a couple months what the need was, why he was doing it, the business reasons for it. Through some research too, you know, I basically discovered that our values at Stone Canyon, our home values, are actually supported by the golf course being viable. There's been multiple articles I found over the last few months that basically have said that in a lot of places, golf courses that fail, their home values within so many days or a few weeks can drop 30, 40, 50%. And that being not only a homeowner out there, but also a golfer, gave me dual concern. And what Mr. Stalling proposed and what he did a very good job and his people last week at our HOA meeting of explaining is that some of that money that's going from the lots that he's going to plan on selling is going to help fund some of the wells that need to be put in place for the methane gas on the golf course. And there's some money, from my understanding from DNR that spoke last week from the state, that'll help fund some of that, but not the full amount. Kevin, as a leasee of the golf course, he doesn't own the land. He's technically not responsible for it. Jackson County Land Trust owns that, and we technically have to cover that with taxpayer money and everything else. What Mr. Stallings is proposing to help the growth of not just the neighborhood, but also the golf course, is to take some of that money, revenues that he gets from the land, and put it toward the wells that will then help with the viability of the golf course. And as a homeowner, like I said, I'm not excited about the golf course changing, but I very much understand the need to, and I'm looking at the long range piece of it, and I 100% support what he's planning on doing. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, whoever's next, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Can I clarify something real quick?
Yes, you may, sir. But you still have to state your name and address for the record.
Kevin Stallings, owner of D&D Development, 5282 Northeast Ash Grove Court, Lee Summit, Missouri, 64064. The second entrance will actually come off of 43rd Street. You have the map, and I'll actually use the pointer. Just to clarify. It's not coming off of Stone Canyon Drive because there's no way to connect Stone Canyon Drive to it, but I wanted to clarify for the people that are here. Yeah, that's, oh yeah. Right.
Point toward the screen behind you, yeah.
There it is. See right here, the end of this cul-de-sac will come out, and the road will come down and around to the outer road that runs up and down this I-70 there. So the temporary road will come in at this point right here. That's where the temporary road will come in at. I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that everybody understood that. There's no way to connect to Stone Canyon Drive right now. The original proposal was Stone Canyon Drive right here was supposed to go through and connect back up to 39th Street, but the fact that that proposal gets within 20, 30 feet of trash, MDNR said absolutely, positively, no, you cannot do this. That's why we've been looking for an alternative. So I just want to clarify. I'll come back later and answer questions that you may
Okay,
ask.
thank you very much for that clarification. Okay. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
James Price at 22500 East 43rd Street Court. And can I borrow your pointer? We're going to be, Kevin, which one?
You got it.
Yeah. And we're here at lot number 9, and everything that Aaron said, we agree, because I thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to go back and have that town hall meeting. I think that was very beneficial to hear Missouri Department of National Resources explain some of the obstacles and the challenge that Mr. Stallings has been facing. And I do realize plans do sometimes change. And I'm not overly happy because I got to give my cul-de-sac away, which is why.
Okay, sir, you need to always speak into the microphone.
Yeah, we have to give this cul-de-sac away, but I understand that we need that additional road to come in there, and I think that's a good option to get in there. And a true story, me and my wife moved my mother-in-law from Hawaii back in 2010, and we built the house over there, and we wanted the view of the golf course, and we were told we're not going to have any obstruction on that one side, and that we positioned the house in a certain location on lot 9 for that reason, because she was wheelchair bound. But in 2015, she had fell down and broke her hip. And when she broke her hip, it took over an hour to get her out of my house because of the construction and one road into that subdivision. So to me, we need that road. So I'm willing to say, okay, whatever we do to on that cul-de-sac, fix the traffic, do a study, but that road has to go in to foresee something like that happen again. Because it was unfortunate, she laid on that floor for almost an hour to get an ambulance and a fire truck through all the construction vehicles in there. But if we had had that second road coming there, we'd have got her out a lot sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Again, give your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name's Terry Hefta. I live at 22605 East 42nd Terrace South. And I live just down from between the tee box and the golf green. And they're gonna move it, you know, 40-some yards or whatever. And I'd like to see it approved for the simple fact, we were one of the early homes that went in there. And they've been building all the homes down the golf course, and they're down to, I think, maybe one lot. But the more houses they put in, there's a drainage issue between the golf course and our lots, and the water collecting down there. And part of this proposal is to take out those berms and put in a drain down through there, which would eliminate the water issues that we're having back behind our house. So it's kind of been an ongoing issue. The more they build, and I'd like to see the developer have the opportunity to sell those last lots that are in there if we can't get that other entrance. You know, what's going to happen with those lots that aren't built on? It's going to be an eyesore, and I'd like to see the development finished and have another entrance in there. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? If so, please give your name and address and make sure you're talking to the mic.
My name is Michael McCurley. I live at 4237 South Stone Canyon Drive. Once again, pretty much the exact same thing Aaron said, except for the aspect that the funding that Kevin's going to utilize for the additional torches will help eliminate that methane gas that's accumulating underneath there. The current system that's in the ground to help control that is inadequate, and it could cause leaching of the methane, which could hazardly affect not only us, but could also affect that middle school and elementary school that's over there. I think it's a positive proposal with what he's doing, going to utilize that funds in order to put those extra torches in to help not only our safety, but the children's safety in the neighborhood also.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jennifer Wilson, 22501 East 43rd Street Court South. And I just want to say I agree for all of the reasons stated already.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Shayla McCurley. I'm at 4237 South Stone Canyon Drive. And I too also would like to say that I agree with everything that has been stated in here in favor of it today. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tony Webster, 4261 South Stone Canyon Drive, Lot 97, and I agree with everything that's been said. The viability of this golf course is mandatory. This is the largest investment in Vicki and I's life, so if that golf course isn't there and the landfill isn't maintained, I have a white elephant worth $600,000 or less, a lot less than that. So. And the drain that will be put in on my side, because I have water issues that come off the course, will alleviate that problem. So I'm in full favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Barclay, 22508 East 43rd Street Court South. I'm on that cul-de-sac where James is. I face hole 14. I bought that lot for that reason. I'm an avid golfer. I want that golf course to be there. That's my dream, to live on a golf course. And I want it to be viable. I believe Kevin has the best interest of the whole subdivision, and I support him and all these people have talked also.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this case? Okay. Is there anyone who is opposed or who has questions? If so, come up to the mic and state your question and/or opposition.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael Stopa. I live at 4301 South White Sands Court in Stone Canyon. I'll make this as brief as possible. I think it's important as it relates to a couple of my points yet that I'm going to make to let the Commission know a little bit about myself. I'm a safety and environmental engineer by trade. I have a BS in safety engineering and a master's in environmental engineering. I also hold my CSP. I've been employed as a professional EH&S person for 32 years. For me, the safety and security of our citizens, our first responders, whether they are fire personnel, ambulatory, or police, as well as the safety and integrity of our city should never be sacrificed for financial gains. At the end of the day, this is essentially what Mr. Stallings' company is asking for. The Independence Fire Code, requiring that 2 entrances be provided when 101 or more homes are built, has been on the books for many decades. It is not new. And as I understand it, it is actually specifically noted on the Plat plan for Phase 1 that Mr. Stallings purchased in 2015. Mr. Stallings markets himself and credits himself as a developer. He's licensed as a developer, yet claims to not know about the very specific and poignant rules of developing neighborhoods in the City of Independence. Now, this claim of ignorance to those rules may be the case, but as I'm sure we will all agree, ignorance of the rules or laws has never, ever been a reason for violating those rules or laws, or even achieving a variance. As a developer, he's obligated to be aware of and compliant with requirements of his chosen field. Not knowing about a significant regulation such as this should not, as I said, be valid excuse for a variance. I need to make a couple corrections to the testimony given on August 28th. That's relevant for clarity. Mr. Stallings stated that since the time he bought 106 lots, he has made significant improvements, et cetera, when actually what should have been said was that in December 2015, Mr. Stallings, D&D Development, bought 26 lots from Valley View Savings Bank. Up until that time, Valley View Savings Bank had been the developer of the subdivision, not Mr. Stallings. He did, however, act as the subdivision manager for a number of years under the direction of Valley View Savings Bank. So it's very important to understand how this process has gone through. Regarding the safety of my family and my neighbors, for the 6 remaining lots within the current Phase 1 that Mr. Stallings owns, 5 are located in the furthest back sections of this area back here in the map that you had, and 1 is located what we refer to as the very beginning of that back section. The other 8 are in that back furthest section. This relates to 14 additional lots being built in that back section with a single entrance into that neighborhood. Based on the meeting from the 28th, and I'm not sure about this new temporary road because I've not heard anything until today, the plan was not to build a second entrance for 2 years. That means we're going to add 14 more houses to the existing 40 homes in that area that don't have a second entrance.
30 seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds left.
Oh, yes, sir. The landfill, I'll skip over that. What we're asking, sir, is the homeowners that share my position and the commission vote not to recommend approval of the current plan based first and foremost on significant health and safety risks associated with extending this without a second landfill, which means second drive-through. The landfill, methane gas, as we all know, is lighter than air and escapes up through the atmosphere.
I'll give you a little more time, just a little briefly.
Okay, sorry about that. The landfill issue is a separate issue altogether. It is not part of the subdivision. We have no special rights to that landfill or the golf course. Some people like it. Some people don't really care. The subdivision is a separate entity altogether and should not be considered one-on-one with the landfill. Mr. Stallings is spending all this money at the landfill as a courtesy, yet he won't spend the money that he's obligated to spend to put in that second entrance that he needs to do. He's not required to spend a dime on the landfill, sir. He's doing it as a voluntary basis, as he's pointed out several times.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who has questions or who is opposed? Okay. Mr. Stallings, would you come forward, and I'm sure you have a rebuttal or maybe answer some of our questions.
Well, let's clarify. With the additional of the 8 lots, it is my requirement to the city to put in the second entrance at the same time. There will not be a need to wait 2 years to get the second entrance. It will all happen simultaneously. Also, a fire hydrant I'm installing for the fire department, which the previous developer did not install, will go from the bar and grill down to the maintenance building that we have on the golf course to have fire protection in case of the event of a fire. I don't own the landfill. I simply lease the landfill. I'm not obligated to spend any money on it, but I feel the obligation because since 2011, when I got to that neighborhood, there were 5 homes built with 5 people living in it, and 4 other homes were built to specs. It went back to the bank. I managed it for Valley View Bank for many years, and eventually I bought it in 2014, December 2014. And I don't know the exact lot count, that may be true, but at that point I bought the remainder because I saw this project to this point and I want to see it finished. I continue to spend dollars on the landfill because if not, the people that are in the Stone Canyon Phase 1 and the school, I'm not saying we'll have methane issues, but it very likely it could happen. So I do it because it's the right thing to do. I want to see this development go through. It has Phase 3, Phase 4 left to go, and I'm in negotiations right now for probably 5 or 6 more phases that will be on or near the golf course as well, all City of Independence lots. And as I stated before, when this development is done, it will produce more tax dollars for the city than any other development, actually all the other developments probably combined. There will be over, in my guesstimation, over 300 homes in and around this development. So probably more like 400. So I don't know. These are just guesses. So, but yes, I've always thought about doing the right thing here, and I hope you guys see that tonight with positive support that we've had.
Okay. Thank you. Does any of the commissioners have questions for Mr.
Can you
Stallings?
explain the temporary road, what you mean when you say temporary?
Well, when I spoke to the deputy chief, she was explaining to me it's got to be able to handle their largest fire truck. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our engineer design a dirt road capped with a rock base that a fire truck can go over. And it's going to be approved by the fire department that this road will actually work. They give me some rough estimates, and it's nothing more than doing a construction road. We do them for heavy equipment all the time. That should be no big deal. It has to meet the requirements, so in the event of a fire, they can come in from the outer road. The outer road, we're gonna work with MoDOT to get that complete improved curb and gutter from the storage building units at Witch Chapel all the way up to the entrance of the development. So,
Okay.
did I answer your question?
Yep.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I might not remember this from the last meeting, but you said you were leasing the landfill? You're
Leasing the land where the golf course is on.
Okay, all right. Thanks, I misunderstood.
Can I clarify this?
Sure.
The golf course is on top of a landfill.
Mhm.
It's regulated by MDNR. It was sold for taxes, and Land Trust owns the golf course. It was sold for taxes because there are special assessments against the golf course that were in excess of $6 million. Basically, there were the financing structure from the prior developer had these penalty assessments. And we are purchasing some of the golf course land from Land Trust for these 8 lots. They have consented to this, and we are just waiting for the appraisal to come back, and we'll be under contract with them. And Kevin is the operator of the golf course on behalf of Land Trust.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else have questions?
Question. The golf course is over a landfill,
Correct.
or any of the houses over a landfill?
They are not. That's a very common question. So if you were to go to our golf course, approximately hole, and I have to go through my head real quick, hole 1, 2, part of 3, our driving range, 18, 17, 16, 15, and part of 10 are over the waste mass that's there, which we have wells in to pull the methane gas out. The area where phase 1 was the permitted area by land or by MDNR. So we had to get their permission, or the previous developer had to get their permission to build houses on. But they are over 2,000 feet from the nearest home to the nearest waste mass that was recorded, if it was recorded correctly, which those records go back to 1995. They think they're plus or minus 30, 40 feet. So, but we have a really good idea where that's at. And just to add something else I just thought of, I'm currently working with MDNR because on one section of the landfill, the wells that were there have either caved in, they ceased to function, and we need to put in 2 new access wells. About $157,000 will be the total cost. This is 2 of 4 that we feel like we need to install in order to make it ventilate properly. The ventilation system that was installed originally was not done adequately enough to handle that waste mass that's there. So we're slowly, through the red tape of the government, trying to get the approval so we can correct the process the best as possible.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
One more question.
Sure, Billy.
You're in absolute control during the developer control period. In the event your philanthropy, generosity, goodwill wanes and you decide to walk away, my concern is then who takes care of the methane emanating from the landfill?
Well, I guess that would kind of go back on Land Trust, who are the current owners of it right now. My ultimate goal is the CID that's current on the golf course is broken. It was never financially going to operate and handle that large of a debt load. I've looked at the numbers. Even the best golf course in Kansas City area could not have handled that. In 2027, the CID expires, and my hope is by then to have an agreement with Land Trust, first right of refusal, to purchase the remaining part of the land, fair market value at that time, and finish the development. Golf courses don't make money, but 2 in Kansas City have proven that to be wrong. If you get enough rooftops all the way around the course, it will cash flow. And that's my hope, is to finish this 10, 15 years from now with all the developments and have the golf course cash flow. And I'd love to keep it in my portfolio for my kids and tell them they can't sell it off. So that is my hope, my ultimate hope down the road. So my goal right now with this, and something else I'll throw in as well, I get the 8 lots, I get the second entrance, I finished the 6 that I can't permit, I finished the 8 that I want to put in. At that point, I'm gonna turn over the HOA to the current development, and the new 24 lots where the second entrance is gonna come from will be a new HOA that I'm going to form. That has been decided, and that way they can govern themselves, and I will start off with a new development because there's 89 acres from where that new entrance is coming, going back west, that can be developed. Thank you. No problem.
So just a point of clarification, right now, since the Land Trust is in charge of this, why aren't they doing anything about the methane?
They can't afford to. They get a budget of about $200,000 a year spread over all the properties that they have to maintain and upkeep. Don't know if you know this or not, but there's a cemetery going down 24 Highway that's real close to 435. They currently have that because it went back to them, and it's costing them a lot of money each year. I spend about $127,000 a year just paying for the electricity, the maintenance on the flare, and everything that goes with this landfill to keep it compliant for MDNR. They couldn't afford it. And I don't know what they would do at that point. So they want me here, I want to be here. They are currently trying to get the appraisal done quickly. Once that's done, I'm gonna be able to buy land from them that's gonna go into their funds and help them finance some of the projects they wanna do. It's going to be a win-win for both of us.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. The public hearing portion of this case is closed. So I don't know if anybody has questions of city staff, comments, motions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
This is a substantial atmosphere change from
Yes.
the previous. Perhaps one time this bureaucracy got it right.
It happens, you know, occasionally.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for that observation, Billy.
Oh, you want a motion?
Well, anything but silence, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move
Yes.
to approve case number 18-310-02 Stone Canyon second plat, number 1.
With
Right? With what?
Recommendations.
Oh, with recommendations.
Okay, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Cindy moved, Mr. Preston seconded. Unless there's objections, we're ready for the vote.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. And clarify my understanding about this again. Is this approved or does this go on to council?
Goes to council.
It goes to council, okay. Case number 18-310-02 preliminary plat, Stone Canyon. Second plat has been approved and will be forwarded to the city council. Our next case, case number 18-100-15, rezoning of 19301 East Salisbury Road.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in the matter of the motion during the first case wherein we recommended an allotment of not more than 3 minutes, I move that that remains in force for the duration of this session.
Okay, that's fine. I think the only way it would end would be as if someone made a motion to end it. So it should remain in force the whole meeting, I believe.
Sure, you could say it just ends at the end of the meeting.
It ends at the end of the meeting. I know we went through this last time, and the city was asked to bring forth some information as far as what other cities have done with their B policies or whatever you want to call it. And I did read what you put in the report. I know you might have something to say, but as far as the report, at least I hope you do, to give us some new information, because I think the point of that was to have us discuss what we need to do or what we would like to have done to pass on the city council as far as a recommendation to update the. Thanks, that's what I did notice it come in.
Yeah, just a real quick update. So after we had met last time, we kind of dug into our code to see how our code compares to other cities around the metro, other cities of similar size in the Midwest, and those results we did present to the commission in your packets. Hopefully you've had a chance to look them over. I think one of the overwhelming themes that we saw through this research was most cities don't necessarily address this in their zoning ordinance, their UDO as we call it. It's more of an animal control type of thing that is regulated in those cities. However, through the animal control portion, that's where we kind of get into the specifics of, you know, hives per acre or whatever that may be, requiring the water sources, requiring certain setbacks from residential property lines, stuff like that. So we haven't gotten to the point where we have drafted any regulations that we think were appropriate. I think our intention here was to do the research, bring the results back to the commission, and then hopefully we can engage in a discussion at this point with the commission to kind of get some feedback. However, do note that we still do have a rezoning application in front of you, and it is up to your discretion, I guess, what you want to do with that application, but that should probably be part of the overall discussion. So,
Question. So you've not had time to, you've done some research.
Yeah.
But you've not had time to put in place any standards.
yeah, we didn't want to get too far, cart too far ahead of the horse here on this one. We kind of wanted to have a discussion with the commission before we, to kind of really gauge your feedback on what the research that we've done before we craft those regulations. From us, and I know there was an expert here on the subject matter last time. We haven't reached out to her yet either. Again, our hope was to get the feedback, and if we are going to craft some new regulations, then to reach out to those individuals and see what those regulations would look like, and then we would bring those again back to the commission for approval, if that's the direction you so wish to head.
Well, I believe that was the original intent, and I thought we had said that we gave you a month, if I remember correctly. So did I just miss the fact that this was going to come up in the next meeting? That this case was going to come back?
We can bring it back, and again...
No, what I'm saying is so soon, because
Yeah.
it's coming up before we've heard any recommendations from it.
So last meeting in August, the commission continued this case, the rezoning case, to this meeting, so that staff could go back to the table. And,
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it was...
A month ago?
August 25th, something like that. Well, 28th, I'm sorry. I heard that back there. I'm going to guess that's right. So it's been
So
close
you've
to a
got
month,
3
yeah.
days left to actually.
Is
Okay.
it reasonable in that we do not have a sufficiency in codes or regulations that perhaps there is a methodology, a mechanism to grant a temporary permit for a stated period of time, at which the end of that time, the city would have had an opportunity to look at best practices, what's going on in other places, and craft appropriate standards and codes?
You're speaking to the current conditions on the property?
Yes.
Yeah, so our enforcement philosophy has always been, as long as we are getting some resolve to the enforcement issue in some way, shape, or form, that we don't accelerate any enforcement from our end. So the property owners are well aware that there is an issue on the property. To alleviate that issue, they have requested the rezoning from the commission and the city council. So we're in that process right now. Because they are working through that process, we have not moved any further along in the enforcement action. Ultimately, if the rezoning were to be denied at that point, we would have to let them know that the bees would have to be removed, obviously, in a period of time, or we would move forward in the next step of enforcement. So again, since we're working through that process right now, that's always been the city's philosophy, is to we're trying to achieve the compliance ultimately. So, and obviously with city processes, sometimes there's a lengthy process involved in getting that resolved.
So what is your recommended pathway?
Right now, I think it would probably be appropriate, and I would assume that both Stuart and Brian would agree with me on this one, but I think it is appropriate to possibly look at some code changes to bring our regulations in line with what other surrounding cities do. Now, we, again, haven't got into the particulars of that. If those proposed regulations are going to allow this applicant to do what they want to do on this property, I do not know necessarily. We'd have to look at, zoning districts that we may possibly allow or not allow these in. If we don't want to put it zoning district specific, if we want to actually have lot size regulations in comparison to the number of hives, I don't know. So those are all things that we have to sit down and possibly talk to people much smarter than we are on the subject and get that information. And again, we just have not gotten to that point yet.
I feel like, for me personally, I just feel like that's kind of what needs to be done, because I don't even know that we have anything to really stand on or help decide, because we really need those walls around us to say, yeah, it fits, or no, it doesn't fit, because we don't know. So I hate to do it to the residents when we don't have a clear answer if it's okay. And I'm assuming those regulations that other cities do already know that it's okay and it works the way they've done it. So,
There,
I don't know where that leaves us.
two parties here. We've got a business that opened without appropriate licensing.
Right.
Because one, even if they come forward, we would not have had the codes in place. Then we have residents that are have concerns, and perhaps now that the applicant is a resident on the subject property and probably has made arrangements for a permanent type water supply, perhaps the swarming would be less. But the commission is not in a position to take a position. I don't know how to take a position.
Is it possible that if they're intending to have a business there, that they still have to comply with that without, you know, how long would that license be?
If there was a home business permit or a business license on there, home business permit, once approved by the commission, is essentially good forever, but then they have to renew their business. Well, I shouldn't say good forever. There's obviously things that can happen that would expire that. Business licenses are renewed annually.
Right, but at that time, if it's decided that it's not viable there, it could be, renewal could be denied.
On a home business, do we have a mechanism to?
There is if there's some violation.
Yeah.
But if there's not, if the applicant decides to close it,
Well,
then
and because we don't have any rules, how would you determine a violation unless they just refuse to pay?
what, oh, you're talking about the business license itself? That would be more of a.
Yeah, I mean, on a business license, we can have administrative hearings on the business license. Again, there would have to be some city code that was being violated, and we could revoke a business license, suspend a business license. But again, there would have to be some regulation within the city code that is not being satisfied.
So it's either, there's no temporary business license.
No.
There's no, so basically what you have to say to them is you cannot conduct business on this property, even if they apply for it, because there's no regulations on what they're trying to do.
Well, I mean, we have regulations in place right now, and
Sorta.
yeah, they're very broad, and that is why the applicant is in front of the commission asking for the rezoning to that zoning district, because that zoning district would allow for the bees to be there. But it is kind of just a base approval at that point. There's no stipulations on top of that as far as what they need to do to keep the bees there. It's just it's allowed in this zoning district if there's this amount of acres.
Looking at Tulsa, Oklahoma, Bee Standards and Animals Chapter limits on number of hives per lot size, minimum hive setback, barrier, and water supply required. At this point, we know that there are some 20 hives. We have a finite land mass. But do we have some yardstick to say there should be this number of hives in this amount of area? I don't know if we have that. So
In our regulations
Yes.
currently, no.
No.
No, we have nothing.
So the commission doesn't wish to abdicate its responsibility, and yet I don't see a way forward without some appropriate standards by which the commission can act.
Right.
I think it would be almost reckless on our part to say, yes,
Right.
20, 30, 40, 50, 100, why not 1,000?
If I can just interject here, really the commission just has three options. You can recommend denial, you can recommend approval, or you can table it for 2 months and let the staff come up with an ordinance to resolve this.
2 months.
And that's why I asked
Or
about a path
whatever the
forward.
case may be.
2 months.
Well, I think it'd be, by the
you've
time it
thrown a
gets
number
back
out
to you,
Come on,
Yeah.
guys.
a month.
A month.
Those are really your three options.
A month.
Or focus on the zoning aspect of this, right, and vote on that.
That's right. deny, approve,
Got it.
or
Yeah,
table.
and I think that's the biggest point to drive home here is there is an application in front of you. And as Stuart said, those I think are probably the three best options that we as staff can present to you. Again, the tabling option I think would be to let staff go back to the table, draft up some regulations here, kind of talk to some experts on the matter that, again, are smarter than we are on the bee subject, and bring that back to the commission. And I would think we could do that. Is it October 25th, the meeting?
Whatever the second meeting
Yeah,
would be, I
maybe
don't have that in front of me.
I think that's achievable,
But
and if not, we will
probably
just,
achievable in 90 days. I don't see all of that
Yeah.
getting done, right, get everything
yeah, we
written.
get into the holiday season where we'll only have one meeting a month in
Right.
November and December, but
90 days.
I'll let the commission decide on how you want to do that, but that would work.
At that rate, it would go to be approved conceivably by the council by their first meeting in December. Because after the planning commission would vote on it at the end of October, then it would go to first reading in November, second reading, potentially the second reading in November, the first meeting in December for the code amendment. Because in addition to approving the one for the zoning ordinance, we would be amending the animal control ordinance as well.
Okay, so you were saying that you can have this handled?
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah.
I know.
And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say we don't already have some thoughts in our head on what would be appropriate. We just wanted to get the commission's feedback on this. We can shoot for that meeting if that's what the commission wishes to do, and if at that time we need a little bit more time, we'll certainly present that case.
I think we would be accountable and responsible to the residents and the neighbors, and at the same time, responding to this application in a reasonable manner. So,
Yeah, and
Mr. Chair, would you table would you consider a motion?
I think postponing, because tabling means to put it on the table until the end of the meeting and before you pick it up again.
Or continuing.
Continuing. Wait. So let me ask you one question. Just hold on. So when do you want to talk about this? Do you want to talk about it after, like in our roundtable afterwards? Or do you want, when do you want to talk about it?
You're talking about the specifics of what you would like to see in an ordinance?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it now?
Listening to me. I think it's appropriate to talk about it right now. I mean, and you do have members of the public here on a continuing public hearing case, so I don't see why it would be inappropriate to talk about this right now.
Well, how about this, guys? What if we do table it or move it to the end? Let's deal with the rest of the folks that are here and then talk about it at the end of the meeting and then decide what we're going to do.
At the end of the meeting or at the end of this case?
Pardon?
At the end of the meeting or at the end of this
At the end of the meeting, let's
application?
move this case to the end of the meeting
Well-
and deal with all the other people that are waiting here.
I think the way forward is to allow staff some time. And I think we can do that.
Well, I
forthwith.
agree. That's why I was asking him, when can we get their recommendations so we can give our input? Because if they just give us recommendations, then we have to decide whether we like them or not without giving any input. So that's why I was asking you, when do you want to do this?
I think the point I would interject in is, we would maybe appreciate to have some very preliminary feedback from you as far as, hey, go back and draft an ordinance, but these are the particular areas we would like you to cover. I know Commissioner Preston talked about the Tulsa ordinance, and that's kind of where we think it probably should head as well, too. So if there's agreement there, that's probably adequate feedback from our end. And again, we can then look into what other cities are doing, maybe pin down some of those numbers to see what's appropriate.
Okay, well, I would like to make a motion that we table this until the end and move it to the end. And then we'll pick it back up again at the end and talk about this. And then we'll make a decision on whether to continue it afterwards or not. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do you want to vote on that? Or were you even listening? You're supposed to listen
So
to us.
voting on to the end of the meeting.
We're
Tabling
I
to the
don't
end of the
remember if
meeting before
tabling
you
needs a
deal with
vote.
the continuance.
I don't remember if tabling needs a vote or not.
If you're gonna move it to the end of the meeting, you could make a motion to move it to the end of the meeting and then discuss it
I
and
just
then
did.
continue it.
I just did. It was seconded.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then-
So do we need to move? So we need to vote on it. That's the question.
Yes.
Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. Case number 18-100-15, rezoning has been tabled. So we'll move on. Do we have to vote on this one that needs to be continued? Okay. I need a motion for case number 3 to continue.
Mr. Chair, I move that we, what am I doing? So
Recommend continuing this case.
I recommend that we continue case number 18, which one is it? Sorry.
810-02.
This one. 18-810-02 PUD preliminary development plan for 3232 South Noland Road.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Cindy moved, Heather seconded.
Clumsily.
Well, you can try it on the next one, see if you can do it any better.
Somebody else do it.
Can I have the vote?
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. The next case, case number 18-200-08, special use permit, has also been requested to be continued. Do I have a motion on that?
In the matter of case number 18-100-16, rezoning at 119 North Wilson.
Nope.
No, wrong one.
Is that it?
No.
One more up, number 4 on your list.
Good, you're as confused as I am.
Really?
I feel better.
Number 4 on the list.
4? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, I thought I had my cases organized. Case number 18-200-08. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We move that that be continued.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Cindy seconds. We have the vote, please.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes, case number 18-200-08, special use permit at 3114 South Weatherford Road has been continued till the October 8th meeting. Our next case is case number 18-100-16, rezoning of 119 Wilson Avenue. Would the city staff give the report, please?
Okay, if we can wait just a second while he gets that up on the screen. Excuse me, Thomas Schroeder requests to rezone the property at 119 North Wilson Road from R12, which is two-family residential, to I-1 industrial. The vicinity map shows the general location of the site, which is south of East Truman Road on the east side of Wilson Avenue. The little circle shows the location of the property there. Okay, this is the zoning for the area. The subject property is zoned R12, two-family residential, as are the properties to the east, west, and south. Properties to the north are zoned I-1 industrial. That's the purple color. This is the aerial photo that shows the vacant property. The property adjoining this lot to the north is also owned by the applicant and is also vacant. Wilson Road is to the west. It adjoins the property on the west. And Smith Avenue and Smith Road are the property to the east. Okay, here we're standing on Wilson Road looking east into the property. As you can see, it's a vacant grass field. No distinguishing features there. Here we're on Smith Avenue. We're looking west into the property. As you can see, it's a vacant grass lot that slopes downhill from Wilson Road. This is the triplex which adjoins the subject site on its north side. This house is on the west side of North Wilson Avenue across from the subject property. This is the one of the city's Water Pollution Control Department's facility on the southwest corner of East Truman Road and North Wilson Road. You've been by there, I'm sure, many times. And then the applicant also owns this vacant lot north of the subject lot. North of the vacant lot is a single-family home. Staff recommends approval of this application.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant please come forward? Is the applicant even here?
I guess he's not here.
Did we miss a message?
I don't know.
Well, then
We can continue this on to the next meeting?
why not? Let's do it. Can I have a motion, please, to continue?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
in the matter of case number 18-100-16, rezoning at 119 North Wilson Avenue, I move that that be continued to some future meeting, or perhaps the next meeting.
The next meeting.
Next meeting.
You know, I just kind of realized that you tried to do that before. You must have known something.
Yes.
Do I have a second, please?
I second.
Okay, can I have the vote, please?
Commissioner Ferguson?
Yes.
Commissioner Preston?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley?
Yes.
Commissioner McLean?
Yes.
Chairman Eschbach?
Yes. Case number 18-100-16, rezoning of 119 North Wilson Avenue has been continued to a future meeting. Our next case, case number 18-175-04 UDO amendment, short-term rentals, is up next. Let's hear it.
All right, I'm going to go through this presentation. Well, I won't go really quick, but I'll try to go somewhat quickly. I'm not sure if the commission has paid attention. Go to the next slide. Yes. Quick timeline on this. We began looking into this short-term rental issue a little over a year ago now at the direction of the city manager's office. Departments really all over the city were getting a lot of complaints in on the Airbnbs and whatnot being located in neighborhoods. So we began diving into this again about a year ago. We had a city council study session back in March of this year. That was after we had met with a staff working group composed of many departments to kind of go through these issues, at which point we gauge council's feedback and direction on this issue. After that council study session, we then again met with our staff working group and kind of crafted some proposals that we thought were appropriate. In May, we went out to the Hotel Motel Alliance with the City of Independence to get some feedback from them, at which point we were asked to meet individually with the bed and breakfast owners of the city, as they had a much greater interest in the Airbnb business. And I keep referring to them as Airbnbs, but obviously there's a lot of short-term rental websites out there. It's just that Airbnb seems to be the most popular. But anyways, met with the bed and breakfast operators, got their feedback and input on regulations, went back to our staff working group, and again finalized some recommendations. I went back to City Council about a month ago, presented our final recommendations to them, at which point they asked us to move forward through the process to get these adopted. Go to the next slide. Just wanted to quick go through some of the feedback we got along the way. With the City Council, they wanted us to create a definition for what a short-term rental was. They wanted some unique rules for the short-term rentals, such as safety, parking, insurance, and trash removal. They wanted us to look at the impacts of what short-term rentals do to neighborhoods, to balance and protect interests, limit roadblocks, and then one of the more important things was to look at the licensing from a city standpoint as well as the collection of the transient guest tax. Next slide. Talking to the Hotel Motel Alliance and more specifically the bed and breakfast owners, some of the feedback we got from them was to create a unique definition that separated a short-term rental from a bed and breakfast, to limit the number of guest rooms that a short-term rental would allow, to limit the number of days that a short-term rental could be rented, what the impacts of these uses would be on the city lodging permit. Currently, the city does require that lodging facilities with 5 or more guest rooms receive a city lodging permit. The management of the use, how the management would take place of the use, and that no meal service be provided to the short-term rentals. Lastly, they wanted inspections on short-term rental units, an application process that made sense, what enforcements and penalties were, and then license numbers for the business license number posted on the rental websites. Next slide. So looking at our proposed regulations, and you do have a copy of those in front of you, quick wanted to go over what those state. But first of all, we have created a definition. We do say that short-term rentals have to take place in a single or 2-family dwelling unit. Reason for this is that if it's a multifamily, it does become what's considered a boarding house under the Life Safety Code. Those instantly require sprinkler systems, so we did not want to include Airbnbs in those because that's a huge cost that can be incurred by somebody who would want to operate one of those types of uses. We do recommend that they be managed by the property owner or a property management company, that they contain 4 or fewer guest rooms, no more than 10 occupants, no more than 2 adults per bedrooms, and that meals shall not be provided to guests. Now, when we say 10 occupants, 4 fewer guest rooms, and 2 adults per bedroom, those numbers don't really match up. One reason we did go up to 10 was, if there's a pack and play or something involved, the 10 total occupants would include any human body, where we're just saying no more than 2 adults per bedroom. So hopefully that makes sense. Individual rooms cannot be rented to separate parties during the same period of time. More or less what we're saying is on a short-term rental, it's one person can rent the whole unit. That's it. You can't have individual people renting individual rooms, and they cannot be rented for no more than 30 consecutive days. Next slide. A business license would be required. The license number is required to be listed on any and all advertisements for the short-term rental. As far as the hotel, motel, and lodging regulations, we do require the collection of the transient guest tax that would take place as part of the business license process. Also would include that guest name, address, vehicle information, dates, and rooms occupied be required from each tenant. That stuff be recorded, and that a room shall not be rented more than twice in a 24-hour period. Those regulations are currently already on the books. Next slide. Looking at parking requirements, we require 1 off-street parking space per room offered. However, we do provide a little bit of relief to that within these regulations, where a credit of 1 space for every 18 feet of frontage is allowed. So what we're saying there is, hypothetically, you have 4 guest rooms provided in your short-term rental. That requires 4 off-street spaces. However, if you have 36 feet of lot frontage, we say that you can park 2 of those spaces in front of that unit, so you're only required to have 2 off-street spaces then. Does that make sense? I'm getting a no from you, so I want to clarify that because that's a key thing in this.
If it's a public street, you're saying that they can actually block that off for themselves?
No, we're not saying that they necessarily need to be parked in front of that house. We're just saying that if you have the frontage, obviously the parking spaces are available on street. So we give you that credit. There's nothing that we can do to say that these spots in front of this house are only reserved for this use. We are just recognizing that there is space available on the street.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Well, if it makes sense to everybody else, I guess it makes sense to me.
Lastly, that refuse collection is required from a collector who is licensed to operate within the city. Next slide, please. Some of the life safety requirements that we require: a map identifying the escape routes, that carbon monoxide detection be required, child-proofed electrical outlets, emergency contact information provided to guests, that there's fire extinguishers and smoke detectors in the unit. So next slide. As far as the review process on this, the commission's going to be much more familiar with this than the council was when we tried to explain this to them. But the application process is almost going to be identical to what a home business permit is, where the commission has the final review authority on that. There are situations where council may review that. And I can go over those real quick. So I'm not going to go over too much of this because I don't want to get too deep into this, because you do understand this. But if you want to flip through a few more slides here, Brian. Right here, it'll say, the Planning Commission ultimately shall either approve with conditions, or deny the application. Depending on what the decision is, the applicant can then appeal that decision to the City Council, or if there's a legal protest that is presented by citizens within 185 feet of that property, then the City Council makes the final decision. So those are the two times that it would go back to the City Council, or would go to the City Council for final decision. Next slide. A few other changes that we're making that I did want to point out too, that are part of this package, is the definition of bed and breakfast. We are suggesting to remove the limit of number of rooms offered now that we are presenting now that we are coming up with regulations that are specific to the short-term rental. We feel that since the bed and breakfast are reviewed through a special use permit process, that we don't necessarily need to limit those number of guest rooms, that can be reviewed as part of the special use permit process. Remove the limit on meals that are offered. Currently, right now on bed and breakfast, we specifically say that only breakfast can be offered. We want to allow these operators the right to offer any meals that they see fit. And they would be permitted uses, they would go from permitted uses to conditional uses in commercial districts, meaning that they have to also meet the regulations that I discussed herein. The other thing that we are changing is that we are adding to the hotel definition that rooms can be rented no more than 30 consecutive days. Sorry, go ahead.
Remove limit on meals. I just kind of slow
Again,
on that.
Yeah.
Given health inspection, who does an inspection?
Yeah, our foods unit would still inspect these. That's part of the process right now. None of that's going to change. So that is all I have. Brian, if we can go to the next slide, I think that should be the last one. Any questions you have on these proposed regulations, I would be happy to answer them.
Do we know how many of these we have?
It's hard to say. We've looked on Airbnb, and it's somewhere in the ballpark of 50 that we can find within the city, but that's not going through the other rental websites and then comparing, because some of them are offered under multiple platforms. And honestly, depending on the Zoom level you get into, sometimes more pop up. So it's really hard to determine, but it's probably somewhere in that ballpark.
So all of them are going to have to come back and do this process with the business. Yeah.
That means denial. Thank you. Okay, so say you have 4 rooms and you have enough frontage, you can park 4 cars out there. You don't want anybody parking in your driveway if you have one, right? But if you have only enough room for 3, then the whole thing is denied because you can't.
No, you'd have to provide for just one off-street parking space then. So if that's in the driveway, that would work.
That means you have to make a driveway.
What's that?
You have to provide a
You'd have
driveway.
to provide one off-street space that would meet our requirements, so hard surface and all that stuff.
That makes sense to me now.
Okay.
Any other questions? No questions. So
Pretty complete.
I need a motion.
Well, we have a public hearing item on this one
We
too,
do?
and I don't know if there's anybody here to speak on it, so.
Well, we'll have a public hearing. Is anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this case on short-term rentals? Okay. Just let me ask you, you kind of came in late, so you weren't sworn in, correctly? Because,
I'll tell
no,
them what
I will
you've
give you the
done.
opportunity. we just got to do everything by the book.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth before this commission? If so, please answer, I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Melanie Johnson, Silver Hardy and Bed and Breakfast. I ask that you would support what.
No, you need to speak in closer to the microphone.
Yeah, a little closer, and also give your address, please.
Melanie Johnson, Silver Heart Inn, Bed and Breakfast, 1114 South Noland Road. I ask that you would approve this, and thank you for the work that the City Council and the Commission are doing on this matter.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this case? Is there anyone here who has questions or is opposed to this case? Okay, the public hearing portion is closed. If anybody has any questions, ask them, or if they want to make a motion, they may do so.
I'll make the motion, but I also just want to commend the city. It is a lot of work, and I think it's a great thing to make our city more relevant and open it up better for tourist opportunities, because that's nice tax dollars. Yes. I move to approve case number 18-175-04, Unified Development Ordinance short-term rentals. Be approved.
I second.
Cindy's moved, Heather's seconded. Unless there's any objections, we're ready for the vote.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. Case number 18-175-04, UDO amendment on short-term rentals has been approved or recommended. Okay, so we're ready to go back to case number 18-, I'm sorry. I need a motion to pick this back up off the table or not. We need to vote on it. On case number 18-100-15. No, I looked at my little cheat sheet and it said we have to vote to pick it up again.
Oh.
So I need a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in the matter of case number 18-100-15, rezoning at 19301 East Salisbury Road, I move that be moved back to our agenda.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Can we take a vote, please?
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
and Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes, so we're picking up back off the table, case number 18-100-15, rezoning of 19301 East Salisbury Road. If you remember, 15 minutes ago or so, we were talking about what we would like to see or talking about the recommendations. So okay, let's wait.
So do we
If
talk
I-
about regulations first?
Sir, if I allow you to speak, if I open up the public hearing, then it means I open up for everybody.
Well, I just wanted to advise the commission that my client has a PowerPoint that addresses a lot of the matters that you might consider in determining what are the parameters of number of times.
Is this PowerPoint able to be shared with the city?
The city has it on.
The city has it on there. Can the city share it with us?
What's the link?
It's real. I think it'd be helpful if he narrates.
Let me think for a second, please. What do you think?
I feel like we still need to discuss regulations, right?
Well, they're saying that this is going to help us discuss regulations.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I wasn't here last, but I have
Sorry.
a question.
Look at you.
All he is asking for is to be rezoned. He's not asking anything about the bees, but he's already got the is there.
Right.
That if he gets it changed, then he can come back and get it, the bees permitted properly. Is what I understand.
But like you said, you weren't here.
I know, but
We're into the weeds on this already. We decided that we needed for the city to have something more definite, because his property is big enough to probably allow this, but the neighbors are against it. And there is no other regulation. It just says it has to be on agricultural land a certain size.
It's not gonna impact our decisions. If we want to time for staff, they can tender that to staff. Staff can consider it. But
I don't know that I would approve that.
I think most of us are saying we're not ready to approve because we want to have the city make some recommendations.
Also, it doesn't go along with the comp plan.
about the bees.
No, about
No,
the
the
zone. I mean, it
to change
doesn't.
it back to agricultural, because it really doesn't,
No,
it's
no.
not in the comprehensive plan to change it back.
So I feel like it's the city who should watch the PowerPoint, not us, because we can't regulate. I mean, we can,
it has no value to our consideration.
I know.
It may be of value to the city, but for our purpose, it has no value. Therefore, I have no need to look at it.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying, I wouldn't mind looking at it, but I don't wanna do it right now.
Right.
I'd rather them send it to me and I'll look at it when I won't look at it.
Send it to the city. The city will may benefit from it, but for our purpose today, it has no value in our decision.
Okay. Because we're not even making a decision, we're
That's
just. Okay, we're back. Thanks for your indulgence. I think, sir, what we're going to do is you have given it to the city, and they're going to take that into account when they actually make their decision on what to bring forward to us. We're just going to preliminarily talk about maybe what we would like to see in it. I do not know if the city, if the city can forward that to us electronically. Well, I would be open to having that and looking at that. But I think at this time, we're not really ready to look at that.
We can do that, and then what we can do again as part of this process is meet with you individually outside of this meeting too, and kind of have you give that presentation to us that you would be thinking, just so again, we have that information too, because as I mentioned, we're nowhere near the experts on this issue, so.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I sense from you guys that you're very open to getting as much information as you can, and I think everybody else is here too. It's just that I think we just want to talk about what information you've gathered and hear that, and then have us respond to that at this point in time.
And at the same time too, I would add, I believe one of the neighbors in opposition also did have a PowerPoint presentation as well too, and we can reach out to that individual as well and get that information. So
Well,
we
sure,
have that.
both sides,
So
that's
we'll
fine.
get both sides of
right?
it.
yeah,
Yes,
to me, that helps you all collect information
Correct.
on helping you figure out what the parameters are. Because my question is not having, I mean, I read through most of what you gave me, but like, do we need to change to agricultural? That's what worries me, is making that decision when we may or may not have to. Or maybe it's completely not necessary and it's really, really regulated by how many hives per, I mean,
And that's, you know, overall too, some of the feedback maybe it wouldn't be too bad to get either is, you know, yeah, do we eliminate zoning district regulations, and do we get down to the point where it's so many per acre and stuff like that? That's stuff that staff that we have to figure out, so.
yeah, because that, I feel like that's like a,
yeah, I'd rather deal with it now and have it decision made, so that if it comes up again, you've got some kind of yardstick or guideline to go by.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what it may look like is we might keep some of the same stuff in the UDO, just add stuff in the animal control regulations, so then you're able to make an informed decision on the actual rezoning request on what the parameters are going to be, or we may eliminate zoning districts based off the information that we get, and the rezoning application becomes moot, so.
yeah,
But
that,
we'll
I don't
bring
think
that
any
forward.
of us are against bees at all. We do recognize the importance, and certainly more since they brought the expert in to fill us in. So we don't want to make a wrong decision, I
Sure.
guess, is basically
Okay.
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so do you want us just to listen to you for a while? Will you tell us what the information you gathered, or can we do that?
I think all the information we've gathered is
Yeah.
in front of you, so I don't have anything else to add to that. I think we've got some direction. If there's anything that the commission hasn't mentioned tonight that you think would be appropriate in regulations, I guess now would be the time to have that discussion. But there's nothing else from staff standpoint that we have to add other than what was presented. We'll get back to the drawing board here and get some possible amendments brought forward. But again, if there's anything that the commission particularly would like to see, I guess now would be the time to mention that.
I think it's, does it need to be rezoned, and how many hives per, what our animal control says.
I think obviously something needs to change so that the neighbors can go in their backyard without having all the bees. So something's not working right. There isn't enough water, there's too many hives, something. So I would like to see something modified so that, that they can go outside and they're not worried about.
I think the problem was that we had an absent owner who did not provide water, and therefore the swarming probably had to do with the bees naturally seeking a water supply. And hopefully when that comes back before the commission, that all of those issues are resolved.
Yeah, I know there's probably going to be a tendency maybe to have it be really detailed, because I don't, if a lot's a certain size, then if it's there was a minimum size, then you'd have to state the number of feet the hives would have to be away from it. You might even have to state that there needs to be a wall on there. And I'm not encouraging you to get that detailed. I'm just saying, I just noticed like in Lenexa, it requires signage. And I don't know, how that signage is supposed to be on there. Is it supposed to be like on a fence, like a dangerous dog or something like that? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because people put those on their fences if somebody should happen to go back there, but they don't put them right out on the curb. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm wondering. I do agree that there's, and I'm sure the people who keep bees would agree that there needs to be a water source, of course. And so if there's a neighbor's complaint, how would the people respond to that complaint based on what? Based on a couple bees, or is it going to take a swarm? Or just that they can visually see them? You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. So I don't envy your position at all, but I think some of these I think we might have to get a little more detailed than maybe you'd want to. I'm just saying that because I know there's probably other people that are keeping bees on very much smaller lots. And you need to decide whether you want to actually, if they're found out, if they're actually going to be shut down or not,
At what point does it transition from hobby to commercial?
Yeah, that too. I agree with that. Totally.
The 1, 2, 3 hives solely for personal use versus 20, 50, 100 hives with a commercial intent.
Well, there's a hobbyist, and then there will be a home business, and then there will be a commercial.
Right.
So it just depends on how big the operation is. And are you going to allow a commercial? I would say you'd probably only allow commercial on agricultural.
Well, that's the thing. You have to, is this an agricultural product? And
or is it industrial?
We don't regulate agricultural products in that respect. We don't license farmers. If you can sell hay out of your property, all these things are regulated by the state of Missouri if they're an agricultural animal, and we don't license them.
If a new subdivision is built next to an agricultural property, and they have their bees right up against the property line, but the agriculture place is still within the city limits, then what do? You're going to make the farmer move his hives back?
Well, there is a provision in some of the drafts that addresses that.
Okay. All right. So you guys are thinking that you're going to go through, I mean, you're giving us some high points here, but there's more detailed things that you're going to decide to lift out. But you don't want to give us any commitments on what you're thinking, do you?
We just, again, we really wanted to get the commission's feedback here this evening before we really hit the books on it, so.
So what have you heard from us? What did we tell you?
Do you want me to go over it again?
No, I just want to
play the
hear
video
what,
back.
if you heard what we were saying.
Yes, definitely. And the good thing is this is all recorded, so we can go back and listen again and again and again, which we'll do.
And you write really detailed minutes about it too, right?
That's why Miranda's here.
Oh, great. Okay, does anybody else have any comment? Okay, so tell me again, when we need to vote on this, we need to vote whether we're going to continue with this, correct? Or whether we're going to actually vote on it.
Yeah, I think those are your options: approve, deny, or continue to a certain date. Which I think we're talking October 25th, right? Yeah. October 23rd, sorry, I'm getting that all messed up.
Okay, I would just, for myself, I would like to continue it, but I'll let somebody else make a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
In the matter of case number 18-100-15, rezoning at 19301 East Salisbury, I move that this be continued to October, the final meeting in October.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Virginia seconds. I'm ready for the vote.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley.
Yes.
Commissioner McLean.
Yes.
Chairman Ashbaugh.
Yes. Case number 18-100-15, rezoning of 19301 East Salisbury Road has been continued. The next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to the minutes? If so, speak now. Otherwise, the minutes will be approved as written.
Okay, which is this one?
Okay, they're approved as written.
Okay.
Any issues that you need to tell us, or any upcoming meetings? We haven't had one for a while.
Oh yeah, we'll have both October meetings. Next meeting, obviously, we've got, I think, a few things that got continued to that meeting, and then we are going to be bringing back some recommendations for the Community for All Ages initiative that the commission went through this summer. So you'll see, hopefully, kind of the final recommendations for that. The other thing is, next council meeting on October 1st, there will be a proclamation for National Community Planning Month. I've contacted you via email in the past about this, but I'm just going to discuss it here tonight. Typically, what we like to do is have a member from the commission, preferably the chair, if not somebody else. I think, Cindy, you've done it the last couple of years, but be presented with the proclamation from the mayor at the next council meeting on Monday. So,
Yeah, I've done it. You've done it at least once. Does anybody want to spend a wild evening at the commissioners' council meeting?
When?
it's next Monday, October 1st.
I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, she just reads the proclamation and you got to
Yeah,
go up there and
simply
say,
what it is the city clerk reads a proclamation, and then the mayor will ask you to come up and she'll present it to you. I think our public information officer will take a picture and possibly put it on Facebook.
Oh, great.
So, so if you don't want that, now's the time to say no. But that's typically and proclamations are always right at the beginning of the meeting, so you don't necessarily need to stay for the whole meeting.
Okay.
But
when I was saying we haven't had a meeting in a while, what I was referring to was our, like with Lee Summit, Blue Springs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of changes. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes with our department here over the last few months, and some few changes with some of the other departments as well too. We honestly have not met with that group in quite a bit of time here, so we have nothing scheduled as far as that goes right now. But hopefully, we can get back to discussing that with those communities here pretty soon.
Okay. Is there any other issues commissioners would like to ask Charlie about? I just have a real quick question. On there, 291, up by Roberson's Dental Place, what are they building on there?
There's a gas station going in there, convenience store.
What type?
It's Star Fuel is what it's called. And
So it's a new, there's not another one in the city, is
yeah, it's not a quick trip or anything like that. It'll have a national brand gasoline, but I believe the operator of this will be the first one in Independence, and I think they're also looking at a few other sites as well. Last I heard, so give me a second here, and I can. You don't know what street that is on, do you?
291.
It's in 32nd Street?
32nd, I think it is.
Yes. Sorry, this
Like across the
system
street.
goes very slow sometimes, so I'm just trying to open it up so I can get the.
Right. Same side of the street as the other, across the street.
Yeah, it's Stark Fuel. It's a new convenience store with gas pumps and a canopy. Now, as far as, do you know what the total number of gas pumps is right off the top of your head? If you want any of that stuff, I can look it up here. It might take a little bit to open some of these plans, but depending on how much information you want.
No, that's
Okay.
that's good. No, my next question. I'm sorry, guys. I just have questions. What is this? What's the? Is there any information about the car sale lots?
Mm-mm. As far as?
As far as well, what happened last time, and
There's one coming up.
yeah.
Yeah, the one there's the one coming up. We've had a little bit of discussion about the issue, but nothing in concrete yet. No solid direction on anything that staff's supposed to be doing at this point. So.
Well, not that I love them, but are we going to try to be fair to some of these folks or not?
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, last time we just said no,
Mhm.
and one guy was moving from one place to another, so it's like he's not really adding anything to the to the tally.
Yeah, we approved that one.
We did.
Yeah, he was moving from independent, I think he was
Yeah.
moving from.
Yeah.
Fairmount,
Creek
and
into
it was in
the-
Sugar Creek,
Yeah.
but down in the
Mhm.
Fairmount area up to 24 Highway, yeah.
Yeah.
And that one
We
was
approved that one.
Okay.
And then next month, I think there was two more that were not approved.
Hmm?
It's across from the old trolley kind of,
Yeah.
the drugstore.
Yeah.
We said no on that one.
Okay. All right. I stand
Yeah,
corrected.
there was,
Well, I mean, are we just
In the
going
old
to?
drugstore.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
I mean, from staff standpoint, we're giving recommendations based off what the comprehensive plan says, what the code says, what all the special use standards are on those. So that's what we're doing. We're not just a blanket saying no or yes to any of these things. We look at all
So
of them
there's
on a
no
case-by-case
discussion as
basis.
far as, you know, maybe we should put a limit on the number we have.
There's
like we
definitely been
have
discussions about
others?
that, but I would say it's just been discussions at this point. We have not gotten to the point where we are
How do we
crafting or
move that
drafting any
discussion forward?
regulations. It's something that we'd have to be directed to do from our standpoint. We have not received that direction yet from city manager's office or the council.
Okay.
So we need to irritate somebody. Because clearly the commission is not happy with approving more auto sales, used car sales. And yet, it's a subjective position and a lack of guidance from us or a lack of guidance that we're putting forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be addressed because it appears it is unlikely that anybody presenting an application before the commission is going to get a favorable reply. it appears.
Yeah, let me, what I will do is, we can have the discussion internally again, just, we'll point out at least, with our one-on-ones with management staff that the commission is continuing to raise concerns about them, and, see if we can have city manager talk to council and just get some feedback from them and see if it's appropriate to move forward at this point.
Okay.
If that works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anything like, there can be so many used sales within this mile radius, and then you can take the next chunk of Independence and say this, or anything that we can like fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, the other ones that we do limit, like what, tattoos or whatever that, how was that legally, how was that legally decided that we can legally do that?
I can't speak from a legal standpoint, but our code does specify a number of uses per population, so. And we enforce the code.
Okay. Well, I wasn't asking you to give me advice as an attorney. I was just saying, how do they do that?
What's that?
How is it that justified? Is our attorney able to answer that question?
I don't know.
Or does he not want to? He's ignoring us.
No idea.
Okay.
Again, it's something that was adopted with the UDO, so it's.
Okay. Virginia?
Yeah.
Can't move till I adjourn.
I'm not moving.
Okay, thank you. If everybody's okay with this, we'll stand adjourned at 7:53 p.m.
No, you were sitting adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
I'm standing.
Mr. Chair.